Good morning.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, everyone.
Nice to see you.
On the second day of xDay 2023, we want to extend a warm welcome to each and every one of you. The energy and the vision we experienced yesterday set the tone. And today, we want to take that even further.
xDay 2023 is a
Well,
confidence.
thank you.
Thank you.
Good
You got
start
this.
of the day.
Smile for the drone camera. All right. So it is a confluence, a meeting point of the finest minds from Web 2, Web 3, AI, fintech, and the Metaverse. Today, it's going to be big. We're going to stand shoulder to shoulder with key representatives from the world's tech titans. And these are no big words. And the government officials that shape our digital policy. The journey has brought together you, the architects of the digital age, and today it expands to building bridges. This is what we're going to do today. Build bridges with the most influential tech powerhouses on the planet, and that's no exaggeration.
The path today has been years in the making. Each network release, each product update, each strategic partnership, has led us to this pivotal moment. It's a milestone that not only celebrates our past achievements, but more importantly, open doors to amazing opportunities that will reimagine possibilities and redefine industries.
Okay, we're going to have all this tech talk all day. We also have the honor of bridging the gap between innovation and governance. And we'll talk in governance because we'll have the opportunity of engaging government officials, starting even early this morning. We'll hear their perspectives on the dynamic interplay between builders, you guys, groundbreaking innovations, and the roadmap to seamless adoption.
And as the day progresses, we will dive deep into the subject of decentralized finance, the future trajectory of money, and the evolving regulatory landscape. With insights from industry leaders, we'll explore challenges, celebrate innovations, and chart the path forward in this intricate dance between technology and governance.
Absolutely.
We want you to benefit from the best opportunities and resources that MultiversX and all its global partners have to offer. And for this purpose, we have packed the morning with precisely that.
Yeah, we have a solid base to start with. We have the guests to lead you through that challenge. Alin Chitu, State Secretary with the Romanian Ministry of Finance, will be with us this morning. He'll join us on stage really soon.
Next, as we continue building bridges with the world's biggest tech companies, we definitely need to accelerate the global adoption of Web3. And who better to show us how it's done than Daniel Roth, head of Web3, Google Cloud, in conversation with our very own Benjamin Mincu, co-founder and CEO MultiversX.
Well, Web3, once we're all on board with Web3, building a global scale infrastructure becomes not only mandatory, but existential. We need it all. That's exactly why later this morning we'll bring you Toby, alias Tobias Jung, is the business development at Deutsche Telekom. He will be joined by Lucian Mincu, co-founder and CIO at MultiversX.
And once we've achieved this, the sky isn't the limit anymore. There's infinite room for our interoperability and growth, as we will soon find out from Georgios Vlahos, co-founder at XLR.
Well, also learn about the useful tools required to streamline your success and to power these tools to full throttle from Amazon, from Nikita Karchenko, Startup Business Development with Amazon.
Yes, but all work and no fun is not an option. So that's why before lunch, we'll wrap up with Gaming Metaverse and Web3 from Liu Bin, Web3 Media AI Vertical Director, Tencent Cloud.
This is how your day, our day will look like. Let's start with the first talk of the morning.
Yes.
First speakers of the morning, Alin Chitu, just a short introduction for Mr. Chitu. He's been Secretary of State within the Ministry of Finance since 2021. His main focus is to reshape fiscality. He's also governor of the Bank of 9 countries and 3 continents, representing Romania and member on the board at the national company.
Yes, before being Secretary of State, he was a local expert at the World Bank, providing advisory service to the Romanian Ministry of Public Finance for projects such as a better solution for providing clarification, interpretation, and ruling on tax issues. Let's welcome them.
And joining Mr. Chitu on stage will be Raluca Bontas, partner in Deloitte. Welcome.
Well, good morning. So nice to be here. This is my first day at the event today, but we'll be here for the rest of the day, and I'm looking forward to it. It's a very difficult task to start the morning with a conversation which, you know, is so permissive, and it's quite difficult to concentrate within a very short time frame a topic which you know, is probably on the mind of everybody. So, good morning, Aline, and let us see whether, you know, we can demolish my skepticism that you know, we can deal within 20 minutes on this topic. And I think we would need to narrow down a bit because you know, it's way too wide and should focus only on some of its constituents. And if I were to, let's say, start asking you something, it would be to focus on the startups and tech in particular, and more concretely, let's say, how would both government on one hand and established businesses on the other hand can and do support startups and tech industry.
Thank you, Raluca. Thank you for inviting me here. It is always nice to be around you. It sounds very peculiar here on the stage, so forgive my wording. So I see that you are quite many. I thank you again for granting me the 15 minutes of fame. Minister Oprea, who should have been here today as at this time, unfortunately could not attend this meeting as he has a government meeting right now. But I'm pretty sure that he would have wanted to be here because usually he's a great supporter of the industry instead of being to the government meeting. And I guess since we wear similar glasses, last evening at around 11, the organizers asked us to fill in this 20 minutes. And I guess since they called me at around 10, I was the last one on the list because we are quite many state secretaries. We are like hundreds. So I guess I was the last one. And they called me at the end of the day. I'm a tax advisor, which is the worst kind of accountant possible in terms of imagination and so forth. So today we should talk about the dreamers who dream in color, and usually the accountants dreamed in white and black and white. So I'm going to tell you some stories, but there is a reason behind telling you those very small stories. So about 3 years ago, I left my former employee, Deloitte. So we are quite friends here. And one of my friends invited me to be part of his startup, and I will tell you about his startup later on. But I don't know, for whatever reason, maybe the COVID vaccine or whatever, I took the decision to serve in the Ministry of Finance. So here I am 3 years after. During those 3 years, my friend is in his second round of financing. He got around 3 million euros, and he's doing something very interesting about taking measures and using the phone. During this period, I tried to do some steps in terms of digitization of the Romanian tax administration and the Ministry of Finance. And why I'm saying that, and I'm going to tell you a short list of things that we developed for a reason. So we have now e-invoicing, we have standard audit file for taxes, we have track and trace for some transport, we put some track and trace for packaging. And why I'm saying that is that I think one way for the state to engage with you guys at the end of the day is to allow you to use this data in your future plans in developing AI. I read this article in The Economist quite a while ago, whereby the British authorities invited the new developments in AI to use their health related information. And it seems that this data is very useful for developing some cures and some medicines in the area. What I want to say is that we have quite a lot of info. At the level of the Ministry of Finance, we have like everything. If you acquire a product, we can see when it has been produced or introduced into the market by being imported. And if it is paid by card, we can see who bought it. And this information may be very useful for several things. Unfortunately, we have the information, but public sector do not really move in such a fast pace to use this information in a more broad manner, except for tax purposes or other very strict purposes. So some support some pressure from your side in order for some information to be provided for you to play and develop the next AI should be made, I think. And I tried to fill in some pillars, let's say, on how the state may help and may be involved in the further development of your industry. And I already mentioned the data. Then I also covered the state aid part within the Ministry of Finance. Now the state aid schemes have been are more developed. So we have another state aid scheme with the Ministry of the Economy, which should start next year. But on our scheme, I have a very nice story. So we have two state aid schemes, and one of them have been very used by your sector, and it still has quite a lot of budget allocated, and in simple terms, the state grants some money for the salaries to be paid, and the taxpayer needs to keep those employees for a while. And the good thing was that we made some analysis, and we saw the state as being an investor into the industry, because for each euro invested, the state got 3 back. So it's a very nice investment. It's 300% in one. So it's a very nice way to help this industry. So we managed to show to the policymakers that this is an investment and it's not a grant or something. It's a very good investment for the policy. So I encourage you all to be involved when we are structuring the new state aid schemes. And also, we have now we developed another dedicated state aid direct, which is not in your industry, but it can be replicated. So we have Nokian, which is a tire manufacturer, who got 100 million euros for the investment made. So I see no reason for an innovation to be financed this way in future period. So we still have 10 minutes. I need to mention also the EU funds in a broad manner. So on one hand, when we were discussing the RRF, so PNRR, how we call it in Romania, the RRF, we had this green tagging and digital tagging. So everything needs to have at least 30% digital tagging. And when we are talking about quite many billions of euros over the next 3 years, I think that's a very good opportunity for the industry to go to those areas and add the digital tagging. And also, there are those direct measures that are somehow tracking your industry. So we had EU funds opened last year for digital developments. We will have now, they will open in different regions other available amounts from the EU funds, and we are talking about around 500 million euros. So you should also focus on that thing. And I have only 2 left. And then we have the tax incentives, and we will discuss about it. On one hand, for many, many years, we had this tax exemption for salaries paid in your industry. And the other direct, let's say, tax incentive related to the R&D, we managed to move it to a certain point while Tiano Borduja managed the digitalization ministry. And now we need to do the proper work with the Commission, but then again, I think it should be available starting with the next year. And that's the only one that I'm going to say. We had several meetings regarding matters that are indirectly handled by the Ministry of Finance. So, for example, we had several discussions on this cloud. If you recall, the EU Commission had a position whereby in the RRF they cannot finance cloud unless it is on premises. And then there is this EU competition with the states whereby they want to build an EU universal accepted cloud. And this sometimes affects some investments made in Romania. So we developed many skills in people living here in developing areas that are somehow US-based. So we need to, what I'm trying to say is that we need to somehow protect our IT workers, even though they are working under the US umbrella. So the EU position on the matter on a short and medium term is mandatory. And to conclude, I'm not sure if you know some figures, and I'm going to tell them, not figures, but things. So, you know, IT&C is, in GDP terms, 2 times bigger than agriculture, and that's a fact for years now. IT&C is higher in GDP terms than real estate. But this IT is not that present neither in political terms and neither in, I don't know, in the public, yeah, in the public press and so forth. So basically, worth that you point out those figures. So you are, in GDP terms, more important than real estate and more important than agriculture, which you can see. And the other factor, and that's also very important, for example, 25% of the growth this year is granted by IT&C. So you demonstrated, not only with this, but also, for example, the average salary in your industry is 2 times higher than the normal average salary. More than 2 times. So you demonstrated that you can do it without or against sometimes the public policies, and you managed to do that. And I think that if we can somehow synchronize the public and the private policies, I think we can unleash something even greater. So I think I talked almost 15 minutes of fame. And now I'm raising this the same question to Raluca because she has more feedback from you guys on the matter.
Thanks, Alin. I think I would add to the metrics you have just provided the fact that, and that has struck me significantly the moment I realized. So if we look at the productivity of an employee in the IT sector, which has grown significantly. I looked at the statistics from 2009 until this year, and today the average productivity of a Romanian employee, so in general, is still below the probability, the productivity that the IT sector had back in 2009. Yeah. That is, I think, says a lot. And having said that, definitely the incentives which were granted, at least on the income tax side, salary income tax side, for the employees, and which are now, you know, as we speak probably, the law will be published soon in the official gazette. How does that come together when government says wants to support, should support, because we see this is the value added that goes into the economy, and on the other hand, you know, we see that that support maybe, you know, is not there or is misunderstood?
Well, I mean, it was not about, even in financial terms, about a very big hit, because at the end of the day, we were discussing about 6.5% in the salaries, which is more like a signal that you are putting that the state supports this. But then this exemption have been there for quite a long time, and I was saying before that, for example, the state aid scheme provides with €3 per one invested. And unfortunately for several years, we did not make any post-analysis on the outcome of this tax incentive. And then what happened was that during those years, from around 200,000 employees, they granted also some tax incentive to the workers in agriculture, and initially to construction, and throughout agriculture. And then we reached out that basically 25% of the employees in Romania were exempted one way or another for some taxes. So politically, they decided somehow to level the playing field and say, well, we will grant this incentive and we will make it uniform for all those three areas that in political terms they see it as being most important for Romania. So I mentioned agriculture, construction and IT sector, even though the IT sector is bigger than them. And I hope that very soon will reach the other two levels combined. So at the end of the day, it was a political decision on the matter, and also it has been supported by the other things that I mentioned. So having the digital tagging, and also many amounts that should be spent by the public sector on digitizing their services. They were saying, well, we are creating a market, a big market, 10 billion market at least. So there is no need for us to further support this one. So we came to this compromise. I mean, I think it's a workable compromise. The fact that we still have a...
To look on the positive side, I think we can conclude, if the time's up, that as you mentioned, at least the tax incentives on the research and development area, both for individual taxation but also for corporates, it's still available, and will probably, a lot of the tech businesses will migrate into searching into this, in applying these incentives.
Yeah. So I guess our 20 minutes of fame are done.
I guess
Thank you.
That's it. If there's any question? No? Okay. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, as we continue with the third chapter of xDay 2023, our focus sharpens on our core mission, building bridges. In this dynamic world of technology, collaboration is not just a choice, it's the bedrock of accelerating growth and adoption.
We promised you titans, we'll give you titans. From Silicon Valley's powerhouses to emerging tech companies in the East, we'll explore how partnerships, integrations, and shared visions can accelerate our collective, I hope, journey into the digital future.
So, as we stand at the cusp of this exciting juncture, let's work together to open new and exciting gateways. Now, we begin with our first fireside chat. Accelerating the Global Adoption of Web3. To tell us, I'm delighted to invite back on stage the co-founder and CEO of MultiversX, Benjamin Mincu.
2 words about the partner of this fireside chat. His name is Daniel Root. He's head of Web3 EMEA for Google Cloud. Now, he is what you might all call a Google veteran. He is currently spearheading the industry-leading company's business growth with AI and Web3. Now, he has led the financial services division for Google Cloud, and he more recently shifted towards the future of technology, so he is the obvious natural choice for our first fireside chat today. The talk is about accelerating the global adoption of Web3, as Luca pointed. So let's welcome Benjamin and Daniel for you.
Hello, hello. How's everyone doing? It's really, really great to be here and start a really remarkable series of conversations on the second xDay. And I have here with me Daniel from Google, and it's extraordinary to finally come together and have these conversations on how we can actually accelerate adoption of Web3 and the technologies that we're building. So welcome, Daniel. It's really great to have you here.
Thank you. Hello, xDay. And let me congratulate you on an amazing event. It's really, really impressive. And your talk yesterday, yeah, I think it's phenomenal. So congrats.
Thank you. The key discussion that we've started with yesterday and that we re-emphasized throughout the day was how can we build the bridges that connect the dots and enable us to accelerate adoption to a point that has never been seen before, especially for Web3. So as we start this conversation, I'm very curious maybe to hear your thoughts on how Google looks at this, and especially since Google is not a small company anymore. So for if anyone or anyone here in the hall does not know who Google is, I'd say there are some very fascinating stats that make this conversation very, very interesting and fascinating. So very curious to hear maybe where Google is at this point, and hear some of your thoughts and progress that you've made around Web3 and some of these technologies, whether it's Metaverse or AI.
Sure. So first of all, yes, we celebrated our 20th anniversary this year. So only 25 years, but also feels like 25 years is quite a long time already. Having said that, we come to Web3 very humbly. It's a very natural fit for us from a philosophy point of view. And I know that it's easy to say, and I think some of the proof points of that is that not everyone is necessarily aware of, is that Google was the biggest publicly listed investor in Web3 last year. We invested $1.5 billion in the Web3 industry. So that really shows that we're absolutely dedicated to the success of Web3. It is a world that reminds us of the rise of the internet itself, where we wanted to democratize access to information. This is the mission for Google, and it has been for 25 years. So blockchain as a technology for us is very close to home. And I think as we are now moving into the era of AI, we see a few worlds collide, worlds that are very close to what Google has been doing and is doing today. And what we're hoping to do with this really exciting partnership that we're announcing today. Woo! And we'll discuss a bit more about that in a minute. But hopefully what we're going to do is we're going to democratize this opportunity to the world. And as an industry, we've all been talking about getting to 1 billion users and making sure that this is not just... Exactly. this shouldn't be.
This is it.
This shouldn't be for just a niche group. This has to be for everyone. And we as Google, having 4 billion users of our apps, and hopefully apps that you all use today, making sure that we can reach that scale through partnerships, such as with MultiversX, is what really, really excites us.
I think I'll double-click on some of the ideas that you've mentioned. And we've discussed in the past a bit what are some of the strategies that we could actually accelerate adoption. Because there are many, many efforts that are being done on many fronts. But the question is always, what are the efforts that could bring a disproportionate effect? And maybe a good starting point is looking at the companies that have achieved this type of scale that you're discussing about. To have the conversation with Google at maybe 1 million users in the early days, at 10 million users, at 100 million users would have been something. To discuss with Google at 4 billion users, more than half of the world's population, that's extraordinary. So I'm very curious a bit how you look at the acceleration path. If you have some things in mind that you believe could bring us from the hundreds of millions maybe that we have right now in Web3 to the billions of users. And as you've mentioned, partnerships and collaborations are probably the most fundamental starting point. Where do you see the growth, the engine for this type of adoption moving forward?
Sure. So let me start with the end in mind. We all talk about Web3, and I think our collective mission has to be that we drop the 3 as soon as possible. What we're building here as a collective industry has to be the next logical evolution of the web. And today, I think people have to be too concerned about underlying infrastructure, wallets, security, interoperability. We need to take away all of these concerns so that we can see a rate of acceleration as we're seeing in the Web 2 world today. And again, the apps that we're all using as consumers. That, I think, is absolutely critical. What is required to do so is to make sure that we as an industry create an infrastructure that supports that kind of scale. And if I think about what we have built over the years to cater to 4 billion users, that is a global infrastructure that spans all the continents, that is ocean cables that connect these continents, that is making sure that wherever you are, you have real-time access to data, and you can analyze that data and use it for your own applications, and do so in a way that takes away the headache of actually managing that infrastructure. And that is why in this partnership, we are very focused on the startups, the builders, the developers, because you are the ones that are going to make this happen. You have to put this technology in the hands of everyday consumers and users so that we can actually start to scale some of these exciting use cases. So getting from Web 3 to the web, I think, is ultimately what we're trying to achieve.
This is the thing, exactly as you pointed out. And I think even in our first conversation, we discussed about this idea that people get a bit distracted usually by the different hills or milestones that they want to achieve in an intermediary state. But it is the idea of getting to the first billion or the first few billion that shifts the mindset completely on the things that really matter. And just to highlight 2 or 3 points that we've been focused on doing as well with MultiversX that have been showcased yesterday. The idea of transitioning from dial-up to broadband in terms of speed, performance, and scale for a network seems something that is a no-brainer. Like, there is no way around this type of shift in terms of infrastructure. So we're extraordinarily excited for all the updates that we've unveiled for the MultiversX network. But even more excited, perhaps, as a step of coming much closer to the users that we want to bring on board is the step that we've done in terms of user experience. And whether it's with X-Portal, where we've abstracted away complexity and added some features that people can use in everyday life, whether it's everything around crypto or all the things that are really, really loved around fiat, where everyone sits at this point. Crypto is something that we have a bunch of people, the communities that we, let's say, grow. But fiat is where everyone sits. So if we have this bridge, we're opening a very, very, very different path for adoption that can accelerate, but something that's even closer to what you were discussing and what I think is funny, because I think we've not managed to discuss this before, is we've unveiled a product called xAlias that essentially enables anyone to log in any dApp with Google. So they'll have an abstracted wallet with everything they need that's non-custodial, and this has been unveiled yesterday. Everyone that's a builder. So everyone that's a builder has something that is not focused on the users directly, but just can be incorporated and eliminates the entire friction of logging in. And what better option to log in with than 4 billion users that actually use Google. So that's I think, a great starting point. But that there are, as Daniel mentioned, many things that can be done on top of that to accelerate things. And this brings us to what he was mentioning before, which will be how we can measure success of our undertaking. The way that we're doing things right now in differentiating things from Web 1, Web 2, Web 3, most of the people will never care about that. They will never care about whether this is Web 1 or Web 2 or Web 3. Most of the people, even in Web 3, might not know what differentiates Web 2 or Web 3. But the way we will know we have succeeded is when this is just the web, where it just works, it's incorporated or embedded and integrated with some of the biggest technologies in the world. And this is precisely what makes this conversation today really exciting, and what brings us much closer to what we've been preparing and working on for some time to be able to unveil. So, Daniel, yeah, drums, please.
Yeah, should we talk about the partnership?
Yeah.
I think people really want to understand what
Let's
this is all about.
Let's do it.
So, let me share with you the 4 pillars that constitute this partnership. And again, from the Google side, we're truly, really excited about helping us move forward in the industry. So, first of all, critical is that we democratize multiverse access data, blockchain data, to everyone who wants to analyze this, who wants to integrate it in their dApps. So, what we are going to do is we're going to integrate your data into our data warehouse, BigQuery, which is used by millions and millions of users and enterprises around the world. So I think that's going to be a very big first step.
Woo! This is done right now as we speak.
So that's number 1. Number 2, we're going to collaborate at an ecosystem level. And what that means is that all the startups here today and everyone in the future that's going to be part of the MultiversX ecosystem, we invite you to join our startup program, which will provide you with up to $200,000 in Google Cloud credits. We're going to invite you to all of our major marketing events. We're going to join up with you in a go-to-market, and we'll help you with introductions to VCs, either here today or not here today, to make sure that we can help you in your fundraising.
Woo! This is a serious milestone for builders, so it really is time to build.
And then the 3rd pillar is where we are super excited, is to become effectively the layer 0 to MultiversX. So MultiversX will be building your platform, your infrastructure onto Google Cloud Platform, where we can provide our secure and scalable and reliable global infrastructure to you and make sure that you, through us, can help the ecosystem build the dApps.
Thank you.
And then last but not least, we're going to focus on hackathons and developer support. So we want to make sure that we put this joint technology in the hands of everyone and support you adopt this through mentorships and making sure that we can do this at scale. So look out for really exciting hackathons to come, and we will be there to support you along the way. So those are the key pillars of our partnership.
So I think it's phenomenal that 5 years from the inception of what at that point was called Elrond and is now MultiversX, we sit here with Google and discuss about how we can accelerate global adoption. This alone is not a dream anymore. It is something that is happening right now, and it's phenomenal to have this type of partnership and collaboration that focuses on a few very, very important points. And I will just double-click on each of them and maybe translate them a bit for the audience. To have the data that we have on the MultiversX blockchain embedded in the Google BigQuery API is extraordinary. Why? Because all the millions of builders that are already using BigQuery from Google can now build and work and integrate and explore everything that we have on the MultiversX blockchain. So it is opening a door that makes things a lot simpler for all the builders that are building applications and so forth. Now, the second point, again, focuses on the idea that we've been pushing very, very hard, that it is the builders that are the engine of the economy, the engines and drivers of change and improvement. And what better can we do than bring even more partners that have strategic insights, resources, infrastructure to do whatever they can to help the builders do even more, accelerate, and leverage some of the infrastructure that has been built. Now, in addition to all that, the discussion around hackathons and the discussion on other collaborations that we're working on and preparing is extraordinarily important, because it means that we're opening this gateway on which we'll have several conversations and push things forward. But it's absolutely extraordinary to have this live now with Google. Thank you, Daniel.
No, it is great to be here and to finally share an announcement with the world. And why we're super excited and equally confident that we can jointly bring this success to the industry is, as you mentioned it yesterday, and it was already talked about this morning, the focus on not just Web3, but Metaverse and also AI. And AI, of course, sits very close to Google. If you consider all the exciting Gen AI use cases that we're seeing today and that we're using, the Transformer paper in 2017 was written by Google. We open sourced it with the industry because that is our culture. We are a very big supporter of open source. And now we're seeing all these fantastic and phenomenal use cases come to fruition. So that's really exciting. And if you then consider that 70% of all the AI unicorns are built on Google Cloud Platform, hopefully that gives you in all the MultiversX builders also the confidence that this is going to be the partnership that you want to be part of and build your applications on and infuse not just your Web3 dApps, but also your other applications with these AI technologies that we can hopefully bring to you. So we very much invite you to become part of this. There are a lot of Google colleagues at the Google booth, so if you want to understand more about using our technology, becoming part of our startup program where you can sign up for Google Cloud credits, please come by. We're happy to talk to you. And we really look forward to welcoming you and seeing all the exciting startups that will come from this. So thank you again for your partnership, Benjamin.
It's really, really awesome. Maybe on a last note, I will zoom out a bit and come back to this point that we've made at the beginning, saying that if we look very closely, it seems we are at a turning point where three technologies seem to rise above all others: blockchain and Web3, AI, and spatial computing, or the Metaverse. And given everything we've seen in the last 20, 25 years, I think it's an extraordinary time to be alive and experiment, explore, and really push as hard as possible to build with these technologies. Everything that we're trying to do is lowering the barrier, bringing a lot more resources, bringing a lot more partners to make sure that with the ecosystem and with the entire maybe Web3, AI, and spatial computing ecosystems, we can push through and build some of the applications that really bring not only millions of users or tens of millions, hundreds of millions, but we can really pierce and bring the billions of users that we really want. It may not happen overnight, as interestingly enough, it did not happen with Google. Like 25 years, when someone says they've started something 25 years ago, that's an entire life. It's extraordinary to even state that out loud. But to have this first step, this important bridge built and showcased and shared with the entire community is absolutely extraordinary. So thank you, Daniel. And it's really, really great, but I'm also extremely fascinated and curious to see how things evolve and how we really accelerate. Not only Web3 adoption, but also AI and spatial computing adoption.
Likewise.
Thank you, guys.
Absolutely great news to start the day with. It's good news for the ecosystem, for the partners, for those that think of becoming partners, for the jobs of the future, for the bright future we're trying to discuss and unveil here. So our next speaker asked me to introduce him simply as Toby. His name is Tobias Jung. His business development is Deutsche Telekom. He's been trained as a mechanical engineer, but now he's one of the most passionate and driven business development managers in Web3. And he's currently scaling Deutsche Telekom into its Web3 future. His goals revolve around pushing institutional adoption and revolutionizing the decentralized landscape. Well, joining Toby here on the stage will be Lucian Mincu, who is, of course, co-founder and CIO of MultiversX. He's the brother of Benjamin, who just left the stage. And he's a self-taught tech prodigy. He was an engineer at Uhrenwerk 24, Zetto Libel System, and co-founder of MetaChain Capital. So, our next topic is building global scale infrastructure. Tobias and Lucian.
Woo! Oh. Amazing, amazing. Good morning and welcome to the second day of xDay 2023. a pleasure literally to be on stage in front of everybody. First thing, I'm not a public speaker, I'm an engineer, making sure that the entire infrastructure stays online with everything what we have announced the last couple of days and the last years. And especially with that in mind, I'm very honored to have with me Tobias, representing Deutsche Telekom, perhaps one of the biggest infrastructure companies worldwide, and especially the largest infrastructure company providing internet, and not only for European Union. Toby, welcome on stage. Before giving the mic to Toby, I'll first want to explain a bit the context of how I got here on stage with Toby. And that dates, I think, almost 4 or 5 years already. Me or us at MultiversX, we're always very passionate on building sustainable, secure, and robust infrastructure for the Internet of Value. And with that in mind, basically, there's always a need of aligning this kind of values with the most reputable and ambitious companies that exist in the world, especially if we're talking and looking at the analogy with the internet, and the new version of the internet would be blockchains, then definitely I would always want to have the most ambitious partners and the most ambitious guys with us aligned and building the most robust technology. And then I think 2018, I saw that Deutsche Telekom was taking initiatives in the Web3 industry. We tried to reach out. I personally tried to reach out with Danny, head of PD. We tried several times, I think, to get in touch. We finally got in touch. We had several discussions 4 years ago. And then in the meantime, until getting everything done and getting things in motion, everybody that I knew at Deutsche Telekom left the company. So I was telling Toby that it's really, really a pleasure that fast forward, I think 2 or 3 months ago, I saw another announcement that Deutsche Telekom was taking part of other reputable ecosystems. And I reached out personally on Twitter, said, hey guys, I'm Lucian. I want to get in touch with the guys from Deutsche Telekom and onboard them and invite you to MultiversX. So maybe that's a bit more context how we got here. And I'm very, very happy and honored to have Toby and Deutsche Telekom with us on stage. And I'll let him maybe give a bit more context what Deutsche Telekom is doing in the space.
Yeah, also from my side, awesome event that you are doing here. Also great to see all the community members here in the crowd and at the event. Pretty funny that from a short message on Twitter a few months ago, we kind of end up here. But yeah, and especially crazy considering that we are Deutsche Telekom and we are not particularly known for being the fastest of getting these things done. So it is even more of an accomplishment to actually be here today. But you may ask yourself, what even is Deutsche Telekom doing? And let me walk you through what we are actually doing, a little bit of a history lesson. So Deutsche Telekom, we started basically as an infrastructure provider for the voice. So we built all these ginormous telco towers everywhere, trying to connect you guys through phone. Actually in Romania, not that much, but in Germany. So yeah, you can call each other and reach each other via SMS and all the other distribution channels. I think right now even we are at a point at Telekom where we are scaling down this business a little bit. So it is even more important to see how we can position ourselves to stay relevant within the future, hinting to the recent news that some of our telco towers even got sold. After voice, of course, the internet. It is an ongoing process with the internet, so I'm not the right point of contact for you if you have any struggles with the connection. But we are working on it and trying to, so we won't stop until everybody is connected in the end. But of course, as a telco company, you also have to think about how do you position yourself for the future. And since 3 to 4 years ago, when also Lucien became aware, we are providing infrastructure for public blockchain networks. So back in the day, we started actually with Chainlink, who is a very reputable partner, I think, of you guys here at Multiverse as well. What we are doing there is we provide price feed data to the Ethereum blockchain, and hopefully one day also to the MultiversX network. But this is still in the making and in progress. So very exciting things to come, and also all the applications that this will enable on top of the amazing applications that are being built already here. After that, we looked into the area of providing infrastructure on the consensus level. So basically validating transactions on public blockchain networks, such as Silo, Polkadot, Flow, and some other networks. This worked out very, very well. So we have been scaling the network ever since. For instance, on Ethereum, where we are hosting multiple hundreds of nodes already. Of course, Ethereum has some scalability issues. That's why we are also launching on some layer 2s, or have been launching, such as Polygon. Of course, with MultiversX, with a very scalable sharding mechanism, layer 2s are not even that necessary. So that is a very good bonus for enabling the next billion users to use very scalable applications on the network. Right now, we are also looking into productization of everything. So not only staking, but also enable our customer base to someday enter these Web3 ecosystems, whatever that may mean, you can think about. But it is very, so right now we are basically building out the infrastructure foundation for our 200 million telecom customers to enter the space someday. And of course, we are particularly choosy when it comes to the networks that we are also supporting on the infrastructure side. Drawing on, so Deutsche Telekom, the normal customers are like people like you and me, like internet users. Lucien just told me how cheap it is to use internet here in Romania. I'm kind of jealous. But it's like not the original telecom customers that we are serving. We are more working with venture capital funds, with blockchain foundations, or even liquid staking protocols. Looking forward to the development in this area on the MultiversX ecosystem as well. And then, let's skip that one. I want to give you a little bit of insights into all the pains that it has to do something like this in a very big and very conservative telco company in Europe. So first of all, our business is mainly built on token revenue, so not really fiat payments. Of course, one very big challenge, to give you a little bit insight on our struggles with Chainlink in the very beginnings. That's a very fun story. So when we provide price feed data to, let's say, the Ethereum blockchain, we need to pay for gas fees, so for transaction costs. But those transaction costs are not super cheap. Of course, on some networks they are, but not on every network. So in order to provide a very reliable service, you need to do those transactions all the time. So there have been months where we have contact our management and buy basically hundreds of thousands of crypto tokens just to be able to provide the price feeds to certain networks. And getting this through like in like these companies is not like the easiest thing. If your management then asks, what the heck are you doing buying crypto for hundreds of thousands? Yeah, like the volatile revenue is also like a very big challenge, of course, for long-term planning and these things. And very big pain that we also have is like a little bit of regulatory uncertainty. Of course, with MiCA, some things are clearing up, but still, the big evil corporates always want to be very safe when it comes to those things. But coming back to like the pain of purchasing tokens, let's say for gas fees, cheap transaction costs are also very important for usability of networks. This is like a very big value proposition. That is also why, and of course scalability and a very robust backbone, like on the network side for Web3. And this is also why we today want to happily announce that we are providing infrastructure for the MultiversX network.
Woo!
And adding it to the infrastructure layer, so to the blockchain infrastructure layer that we are currently building out to onboard the telecom customer base in the future. And we are very proud to, since yesterday evening, I think, it was a little bit of a, some technical challenges, but we actually made it yesterday. You can find our validator node on the chain already. So you can, I think we are on place 28 right now. Woo. So we are very proud to validate your guys' transactions on this chain and try to provide a very robust and reliable infrastructure for the future of the web, for Web3.
Amazing. Maybe just to touch on the importance and the meaningness of Deutsche Telekom having on board a MultiversX. Maybe if you look at the analogy of the transition from dial-up to broadband, actually everything what we have today in terms of technology, it happened because we were able to provide the throughput and the bandwidth needed for many protocols over the internet to exist and innovate and improve the quality of life on everything what we have today with respect to technology. Now, especially knowing that Deutsche Telekom stands for that and has been doing that since a very long time in Europe, it's an honor, as already mentioned, to have them on stage and being part and aligning and building the next infrastructure or the future of the infrastructure in the Web3 industry. So if there are any Eagle holders in the room, Deutsche Telekom is available for staking as we speak since yesterday night, and again, pleasure to have you on board. Maybe with respect to that, I'm curious maybe about the future plans of Deutsche Telekom. You were mentioning that perhaps Deutsche Telekom has more than 200 million users as we speak. And I'm curious about the use cases, if you can elaborate. How do you envision, or how Deutsche Telekom envision the way of onboarding them to the Web3 industry?
Yeah, so a big so one example would be if we talk in MultiversX terms, right? The things that you have been building, right, to enable people to join the Web3 is, for instance, like the X Portal app, right? A very user-friendly entrance point to all the things in Web3. Of course, at Telekom, we are also eyeing into the direction of these things, but also when it comes to on-chain identity. I mean, right now it's a wallet or let's say some kind of domain that you have, a name. But of course, also from the telco perspective, it would be very interesting to have things like mapping your phone number to your wallet address. There are some initiatives going on in Europe right now. Those are a very early stage, but of course, this is things that we are looking into. And yeah, when it comes to the depths, I think we are very reliable on the builders who are all here today to continue building also in the hard bear market times. I think that's the perfect time to build the things for the next billion users to enter Web3.
Definitely,
yeah.
definitely. Maybe 2 points to add on top of that. One, Xportal already has a mapping with the phone number, hashed, of course, encrypted, such that you cannot know it or you cannot misuse that in any way. However, I think it's a very good step forward. Mapping that, I'm curious to have the follow-up discussion at the next xDay on how we evolve that thread. And then, secondly, definitely builders are here to very welcome, especially to be able to support and innovate. I think that's what drives the future and improves the lives of everybody for tomorrow. So again, pleasure having you, Toby. Pleasure having you and having Deutsche Telekom. Welcome to MultiversX. And yeah, looking forward for the next xDay, how the discussion will evolve. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure. Cool. Thank you. Cool.
So, our next guest is Georgios Vlachos. Aside from being one of the co-founders of XLR and one of the founding members of Are you okay? Of Aragon before that, it's one of the global champions of Web3 interoperability. His remarkable blockchain experience and mathematics-driven mind put him on a path to redefine the space of innovation in technology. And on that path, a very significant milestone. He joins Benjamin Minku to talk about interoperability and growth in the third fireside chat of the second day of xDay 2023. Welcome.
Hello again. Really great to have this conversation today with Georgios. And some of you may already know about XLR, but I think a really great way to find out what they're doing and why what they're doing is really special and core to the idea of accelerating growth. I'll just let Georgios give you a bit of an idea of why they're sort of conquering the world in the interoperability space.
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much for having me, Benjamin. We've been talking for a while, but it's the first time to meet in person, so really excited to be here. Thanks everyone for joining. Let me start by framing the problem we're solving and why it's important, right? So, as you all know, today there's many different blockchains that optimize for different things, right? Ethereum, the EVM, was the first VM to ever launch. It was a massive innovation and allowed developers to really build anything you can conceive, any application you can conceive, you can now build on top of a blockchain. But Ethereum itself and the Ethereum virtual machine has many limitations, right? It forces you to write in a certain language. it does not scale enough. And that's why recently we saw the emergence of many different blockchains, MultiversX being an excellent example, that give developers optionality. And to scale the space, we really have high conviction that there's going to be hundreds of blockchains. And the reason is simple. If the space succeeds, there's going to be hundreds of real-world applications that are going to live on the blockchain. And those are not going to be able to scale on a single blockchain. For every single application, we're going to need a different blockchain. And in a world of hundreds of blockchains, we have scalability, but we do not have usability, right? Because let's imagine a user has an asset on something like Polygon, but they want to use an application on MultiversX. You will have to have multiple wallets today. You will have to bridge. It's a very cumbersome process. So interoperability is really about breaking down these barriers of fragmentation and making Web3 usable in a multi-chain world.
And this goes back to our point, and maybe the key of this conversation, which is if we want to succeed, we need to start from the standpoint of how the internet, the web, will look like, where everything around blockchains is just embedded in the internet, and people don't really care what blockchain is it on. They only care that it works, that it's fast, almost instant, inexpensive, and the usability makes sense, that it's not an obstacle. And so we've discussed what are some of the paths of reaching that point and how we can accelerate that path, because it's one thing for this to happen in 50 years, and a very, very different thing to happen for it to happen in 1 or 2 years or right now. So the whole point is, one strategy is collaborating with some of the biggest partners in the world on some specific directions and finding the best of them with which we can immediately accelerate things. This is why interoperability essentially is the one thing that enables builders to reach the audiences and to not care about the obstacles that they would normally come across. So I'm very curious a bit how Axelar maybe works or solves this idea and why it's really special for the blockchain space.
That's great. First of all, I really like the framing with the internet, and an analogy that has been around in the space for a while is that interoperability is really the internet of blockchains. It's very easy to see each single blockchain as a world computer. Everyone can program an application on top of it the same way you can program an application on your MacBook. But then, MacBooks would not be as usable if you could not communicate with other people, send emails, make payments, browse the web. And the analogy we make is interoperability technology is the internet of blockchains, right? So I really like this framing. And before we talk about Axelar, just to quantify a little bit the importance of interoperability technology, right? And if you look at how people use blockchains today and how people use applications today in general, right? You're going to go on your phone, you're going to send a message on WhatsApp, maybe then you make a payment, you send an email, you browse the internet. Typically, you're going to do a few transactions of every application, and then you're going to move on to the next application. And it's the same thing for blockchains. Maybe you go do a swap on Uniswap, then you go on Aave, take a loan, maybe take a few loans, go buy an NFT. Typically, what we see is that the user is going to do maybe 3 transactions and then move to the next application. And these are all cross-application transactions. And in a world where the major applications are going to be on their own state machines, on their own blockchains, every 3rd or 4th transaction is going to be a cross-chain transaction, which means that like 25% of every blockchain transaction is going to be cross-chain. Right? And we have to make those transactions so seamless that users don't have to think about cross-chain, they don't have to think about which blockchains they use. Only the developers should know that they're using MultiversX or Solana or Bitcoin or Ethereum. That should all be completely extracted away from the user. Right? So interoperability and the technology we're building with Axelar is not really about any novel use cases. It's about making existing use cases, applications, usable in this multi-chain paradigm. And just to talk a little bit about how Axelar in particular solves this problem, we started about 3.5 years ago. Together with my co-founder, we were both part of the founding team for the Algorand project out of MIT. And once we launched this blockchain, we recognized how hard it is to onboard users and developers to a new platform. That was around like 2019, 2020. Most of the users were on Ethereum, but they all wanted to onboard to the chain, but there was no bridging solution, there was nothing, right? There were not even stable coins on the platform, and we realized how strong interoperability is going to be, how powerful, and we decided to build Axelar as a solution that solved this problem for the wider ecosystem. So if you're an application, a blockchain developer, you want to launch a new chain, you can very easily get access to users from any other blockchain, right? So that was like the core fundamental idea for Axelar. And then we realized, okay, it's not about novel applications, it's just about making new blockchains usable, and that's how we got started. And now at the time, if you look at the interoperability space from back then, there were all kinds of bridges, right? There were all these like kind of centralized bridges that were operating like a custodian. And their thinking was they want to go to market fast, capture the developers, capture the users, and then decentralize the actual infrastructure below, right? You probably remember things like the Harmony Bridge, the Ronin Bridge, multi-chain more recently. Multi-chain was working for like 3 or 4 years, fine, but the underlying infrastructure was very centralized, right? The founder was holding all the keys. So, please go ahead.
That never ends well, with the founders holding the keys, and then it works for 2 years, and then when it becomes large enough, such that hackers really put the effort and resources to find the hole, they always find the hole. But I think the entire point of our conversation goes back to this idea that if we can onboard the next billion users, then everything changes. All the applications have a different market. All the builders have a different target audience they can address and serve and so forth. And the only question that we really care deeply about is what other strategies are there in addition to, for instance, building the infrastructure that really scales and then building the UX that's so simple and compelling that enables the users to actually interact with whatever applications they want. And it seems that interoperability, however long you zoom out, it's super clear that there is no way around it. So unless this is embedded in the internet, just as the simple interoperability between any other protocol that we have right now, it seems like we will just stale the entire adoption for years just because we've not learned the lesson. And then as soon as we enable this type of interaction, it almost also seems that a lot of users will discover different use cases, different experiences, and different benefits that might not be obvious for them, that might shift in a very different way than you would think. So you might think that initially there's a stage at which there's fragmentation. There's an initial stage of, let's say, interoperability with bridges and so forth. But then it's hard to think that what you'll have is use cases on every blockchain when actually the trade-offs are really high. So unless you have some really high constraints, it might be that after you have interoperability and easy flow between any other chain, you might see a huge concentration that was not obvious or was counterintuitive at first in one particular chain. So I'm curious a bit how you see this type of adoption, how many, let's say, users you've seen playing with the technologies before you started Axelar, even with your experience with Algorand and all of that, and how have you seen experience and implications shift since Axelar, especially with ecosystems like Cosmos or some of the other ecosystems where this bridge literally connects 50 or 100 islands that otherwise would be segregated without users passing from one island to the other. Very, very curious to hear a bit your thoughts.
Yeah, I think in terms of adoption, because the technology was built is really recent, right? Before Axelar, we only had those bridges that just worked for asset transfers. We only launched the more generalizable cross-chain messaging platform that people can truly build seamless cross-chain experiences on, that only launched recently. So I wouldn't say most of the exciting use cases have launched yet, but we can actually think through how interoperability would transform some of the existing use cases, right? And I'm really curious here. I know with MultiversX, you have built a full stack solution, right? Like, and even internally, right, you built, I believe, a wallet that has an excellent user experience, and there's so many primitives built in your ecosystem. So my question to you is, what's the most, or maybe one of the most exciting applications built on MultiversX? And then we can talk a little bit about how interoperability makes this particular application more usable.
It is, interestingly enough, Exportal, I would say, just because it's a collection of application, precisely because, and I'm not sure if you've seen the presentation yesterday, everything you've seen in Exportal before when we had the conversation has just gone to a completely new level with cards, with on-ramps, with all of that. So now you have crypto, you have cash and the elements around that, but you also have this hub that enables a very simple onboarding in any application with identity, with wallet that you can interact just with one tap. So I'm very curious to hear, for instance, how Exportal could be taken to the next level through Axelar.
Okay, let's talk about an example here. I'm completely making this up. Hope it applies to your product. Let's say you have tokenized some real estate on your platform, right? And the user there has onboarded their identity as well. It's a gated process. You need to do KYC to participate, right? And the user holds some of these assets on the MultiversX platform. Now, you have some asset as a user on a different blockchain, like Ethereum, right? And you, or actually, let's say you want to sell to a user that lives on a different platform, right? You hold your asset on the MultiversX platform. The user holds some USDC on Ethereum mainnet. Effectively, what will happen is that the MultiversX user will just have to onboard to the Exportal wallet. The other user may have MetaMask on Ethereum. The two users will be able to interact without the MultiversX user ever having to use MetaMask, without the Ethereum user ever having to use Exportal. Now, ideally, every user will have to onboard to Exportal and like can be a major wallet.
That's it. Thank you. I'm also going to just take one example, and then maybe we'll come to the important milestone that we reached today, especially with an important collaboration that we've been working on for some time together. Taking one of the, let's say, largest applications or fields that we've seen built on blockchains, DeFi. How do you think DeFi is supercharged through Axelar, especially with everything we have right now on Ethereum, on some of the other chains? Have you seen some change in behavior or users thinking about some other things that were not previously possible before Axelar?
So again, I want to emphasize that cross-chain is not about new use cases. It's about making existing use cases seamless in a multi-chain world. And I think a pivotal moment here is going to come in 2-3 weeks with the launch of the DYDX chain. Now, DYDX chain decided to spin out from Ethereum and launch their own blockchain because they wanted to customize it, they want to scale faster. But this blockchain is an island, right? It's completely fragmented from the rest of the world. And the collaboration we have with them is enabling seamless onboarding to their chain. So we're actually going to work with them in 2 different stages, have 2 different flows. The first flow is going to be onboarding to the DYDX chain. So if you have an asset on the 50+ chains that are connected to Axelar today, you will be able, with one click from your wallet, deposit any asset to the DYDX chain. The second step we're hopefully going to launch at some point next year is directly interacting with the DYDX application on the DYDX chain without even having a wallet on DYDX. So you're going to be a user on BNB, you're going to open the application of DYDX, you're going to say, I want to open a position, the wallet is going to track where your asset lives, and you're going to be able to directly access the application. So we're abstracting away completely the multi-chain, we're abstracting away bridging, we're abstracting away everything. And I feel like this is really like a big application that a lot of people use. And once people experiment with it, they're going to get excited about cross-chain, they will understand what it's all about, and this will inspire the next wave of developers to build true cross-chain applications.
And I will come to the point that we've started with, namely that the most important thing is how do we accelerate adoption? How do we bring more users? And there are several paths to this. One path is to just connect to the biggest platforms in the world. Try to make the technology more accessible, simpler, and just give the billions of users that already have access to those platforms access to the tools around blockchains. And this we've shared a bit, and we're moving forward with that. But a different path that's complementary to everything we were discussing is precisely what Georgios has been discussing. And I'm very, very curious, one, how many chains you have currently integrated, how many, maybe 2, 3 stats that you think are the most remarkable, and then perhaps we discuss a bit what's the most exciting thing of what we're building together.
So as of this week, there's 50 chains connected to Axelar, Scroll being the most recent one. So that's what's nice about Axelar's integration model is because we did not take the shortcuts that many of the other players took, where they basically had the founders holding the keys. As we talked about, we actually created a decentralized validator set that is responsible for all message and passing across chains. So I think one remarkable stat is that right now we have a permissionless set of validators. There's 75 validators on the Axelar network. I think the second closest competitor is Wormhole with 19 validators. So we're the most decentralized by far on the market, and decentralization is really the key that can prevent the most common attack vector, right? I believe just last year in interoperability, around $2 billion were stolen because of centralization. So this is something we started to tackle from the early days. And because we built this decentralized validator set, we actually architected Axelar as a blockchain itself. So we have a blockchain. Its sole purpose is to facilitate interoperability across other blockchains. And because of that, it's very easy to add new blockchains to our network. We offer many-to-many connectivity, where if you connect MultiversX to Axelar, through Axelar you can route messages to any other chain, right? So what's existing today or before Axelar is a pairwise model where you have to make these connections one by one, and it would have to scale quadratically. So if you want to have 50 chains, you need like thousands of connections on the back end, and this gets harder and harder as time goes on. But with Axelar's model, we are working together now to create a connection with MultiversX. Once that is live very, very soon, you are going to be able to communicate with MultiversX and any of the other 50 blockchains that we have in the Axelar ecosystem, right? So, woo!
So, just to emphasize this, for some time, we've been discussing a lot with the different players within the entire blockchain ecosystem, looking for some of the partners with which we could accelerate this type of adoption and enable people from MultiversX or from other blockchains to cross bridges without having to worry about security, without having to worry about obstacles in user experience. And the entire metaphor that I'll come back to over and over again is we might have the best island in the world. The island where it's literally a paradise. You have a lot of fun, everything works, it's awesome. But if you're in the middle of the ocean and you cannot move away or leave that island, then there's no point in being on that paradise sort of alone. This is why interoperability is key, because it opens the bridges not with one chain, but with 50 chains and then hundreds of chains. And this should be the default within the ecosystem so that we can really say the technology is embedded in the web and it enables millions, then tens of millions, hundreds of millions, and billions of users. So again, we're truly excited to announce that with Axelar, we've been working for a very long time now to make this bridge available, and probably in the next few weeks, we'll have some conversations on how this will go out, test it with all of you. But it's really great to have you here. to announce this together, and very much looking forward to the next integrations that then will bring even more blockchains to this new standard that enables more users to interact.
Right. We told you we'll give you big league. Here's the big league. Now, next in line is Amazon. Amazon Web Services, to be more precise. And the powering tools for the entire world. Now, when you say anything about Amazon Web Services, to be more precise, startup business development, you cannot say anything without mentioning Nikita's name. He is an entrepreneur turned digital innovator. He founded Witbox, he managed BQ, he launched Lovey Coffee, he boosted EU sales and the Global Shift program. And now here's in front of you, next to Lucian Mincu, for powering tools for the entire world. From Amazon Web Services, your own and only, Nikita Kharchenko. Welcome.
Welcome, Nikita. How's it going?
I'm good. Luciano asked me before this meeting, please, Nikita, take this relaxed pose like everybody should use on this stage. So I'm following your advice.
Welcome again. Pleasure having Amazon with us at the second xDay. Hello, everybody again. Maybe, again, it feels like pretty much all my stories might be personal or very personal, but I'm very passionate about what we're doing here. And that's maybe, I think, the most healthiest way of building stuff. And I'm very happy that today we had the big league when it comes to infrastructure. Infrastructure delivering data, infrastructure allowing and giving the bandwidth to technology and different and new protocols that, as already mentioned, improve the quality of our life ever since. And without further ado, I'm very excited to give you the mic and maybe walk us through about what AWS is doing, how AWS is especially coming closer to technology or to technology providers, innovators, and builders especially, and most important, founders as well, to make them successful, not only providing infrastructure, but also maybe some other angle with respect to startups.
Luciano, thank you much for this question. Before I will start answering, I would like to say thank you to this audience, to the builders and builders sitting here, because a lot of people asking me during the day and the day before, Nikita, how do you feel like here? And I feel this vibe, feel this energy of the people really disrupting the story, really building the future, despite everything which is happening in the world. And it's like I have an organic feeling like a person. I have an organic feeling as a person inside AWS who has an access to variety of resources to support these motions, to support MultiversX team in your vision, in the delivery of this vision, in this making new things happen. So thank you much for this. And
maybe if I'm allowed to give a bit more context about how the relation started. Again, it all started years ago. it feels like we're almost getting dinosaurs here, building dinosaurs or so forth. Years back when we had to, prior to the mainnet launch, we had to deliver about, I think, we had 150 releases, protocol releases prior to the mainnet. So 150 versions of the MultiversX chain released in less than 300 days. So that's almost every second day a new build. And with that in mind, basically we started first almost like a garage in the office, building, deploying this kind of infrastructure, trying to stress test and so forth. But very, very soon we seen that we needed a way better infrastructure, way better, way faster, very robust infrastructure, or perhaps the most robust infrastructure in the world to build this kind of technology. And that's when we actually started discovering AWS, and not only discovering, actually having a very close discussion around what we're building, how they can help us, and they have always been helpful with us, providing the technology and the tooling needed for building and getting us here. And I'll let maybe, again, Nikita go through the roadmap, or I think how we're going to go forward from here, because technology or the part of for developers or builders is very, very relevant, but also the success and the distribution of the software or products, I think it's very, very critical in every market cycle or product cycle.
Thanks, Luciano. Thanks a lot for these warm words. I recognize the usual, I would say, way how is it organized in AWS culture. We are working, I would say, backwards from the customer's needs, from your team's needs, and whenever customer, whenever partner asks for some specific thing or has a very specific bottleneck, which could be related to tech-savvy stuff or business-savvy stuff, which is my favorite topic, you will see today. We are trying to engage the right teammates, the right team to help and to support your vision and your road to market. That's the story. During my 10 minutes going to this fancy place in Bucharest today, I was thinking, what is the main thing I would like to deliver to you so nobody from you would regret spending 20 minutes listening to this person sitting in this pose, specially designed pose. And I would like to talk to you about children. Because building a new vision, it's very familiar to growing up a child. And what is the most important, I would say, here, growing up a child, is to understand what exact needs, which are very different during his life, you should deliver to him, and which are relevant at the moment. Because I would say in AWS, there is plenty things, resources, which are laying on the table, and it should be a very wise strategy what of them are relevant to your startup, to your vision at the moment. They are divided into 3 groups. One is like tech-savvy stuff, cloud infrastructure, as it is. There are go-to-market motions which help you to accelerate your business results, I would say, the audience. And there is a visibility story, which we are sitting right now together and discussing a lot, which means a lot to drive the penetration of the Web3 in the world. However, if to divide it into the different stages, you see there are peculiar things which are related to every stage of your journey on the market. When you are just starting building on the hackathon, for example, you need to have opportunity, I would say, to have a gratitude infrastructure to build, and to experiment and to trying to reach your, I would say, MVP, which could be scaled. When you have an MVP, when you have a touch, when you begin to recognize your customer, and covering the needs, it's like the stage to scale your POC. And there are different, I would say, relevant programs inside AWS to help you make it efficiently and comfortable for you. This they are mentioned on the screen. And again, and now my favorite part is go-to-market motions. If you have the customer, if you have the traction, if there are VCs or investors who believed in you and invested money and believe in that your vision could be a reality, it's time not only rely on you, on yourself, but also to find and to challenge AWS, for example, account managers, whoever, a person sitting in the yellow jeans in front of you, asking him, how could you help me in go-to-market motion with this exact profile of the customers? And there are plenty of programs devoted to this, and there are plenty of, I would say, dedicated teams inside AWS. They called, for example, Web3 dedicated business development team, who could help you with this go-to-market journey, you see? And coming back to the babies and coming back, I would say, to my main message to you is like the right pillow for the right stage could accelerate you a lot. It would not substitute your fundraising talents. It would not substitute your sales machine, you see, your magnet marketing power, but it could accelerate a lot. This is the story which I wanted to share you.
Definitely. Maybe just to restate and clarify a bit. So I was mentioning earlier the part where Amazon stepped in and we were, I think, at the first step, building a POC, validating the product, right? Scaling up and having the right tools and the right support from the partners was especially very, very, very important and critical at that time. But I'm very happy to see that as the product grew and we become a global infrastructure which is not about ourselves anymore, but rather building a new kind of technology that enforces new builders, new founders to generate value into the world is aligned with Amazon, especially now seeing and maybe clarifying again, Amazon is part of the hackathon on the MultiversX hackathon track and supporting builders as of today. So big thank you to that.
Thank you much. Thank you much. Thank you much.
Maybe I would just touch on another point that I think should be clarified. Of course, you get a tech, you get the support for the builders, but it's again only about, I think for now, the angle have seen only about the technology. What about the VCs? What about the distribution? And I think with respect to that, there's a joint or an unknown phase from Amazon, at least for most of the startups, that they can come in and bring their network of VCs, connections, open doors, and bring the distribution, especially how Nikita was mentioning. I think I'll maybe invite Nikita to touch more about that topic as well. Maybe it's one of the next slides. I'm not sure. I don't want to steal the...
This is my favorite topic because it is a bit peculiar, and you will feel the story which is standing behind at the moment. Say that I'm receiving email box on a regular basis, on a weekly basis, I would say, up to 7 requests. Please, Nikita, introduce me to this exact VC, to any VC, or like whatever. Because you told that AWS is like devoted to support startups, I'm here to challenge you. Please introduce me. And first thing to know, my first question to these founders is, whom did you knock to the doors? What kind of a feedback did you get? And like, tell me the story. And if there is no story, there is no feedback, there is no traction, you see, it's useless to engage AWS VCBD manager like to help because you are not ready. However, what is very beneficial here and what I really do, I share a special kind of a playbook how should be the Web3, for example, pitch deck look like, I could easily introduce you to the relevant VCs sitting in my network. You see? And this is what VCs are also asking me, Nikita, if you see the startups which are relevant to this exact, I would say, architecture industry, or to this exact product, please ring a bell. You see, this is the story. So I would like to emphasize that there is no person who could substitute you, I would say, in fundraising, but there is a person who could, I would say, introduce you to a VC if the steps in advance were made. Second thing to say, again, there are special programs which are AWS Startup Love Acceleration, AWS Startup Mentorship, Fintech Accelerator, some others which are not mentioned here, which have one of the main targets to put you in the right audience of the venture capital funds, you know, of your industry, to give you an opportunity to pitch in front of them, being prepared by our team from the product perspective, from the technological perspective, from the marketing perspective. That's the story I would also like inspire you to take part, because I see significant results here. That's my answer.
Amazing. Seems like there's a lot of pipelines for builders to join and get feedback, and especially the relevant intros to people that can help them take their business or their idea to the next phase. I'm curious maybe to go even further with our discussion and explore with respect to distribution. I think there's some very, very specific points where AWS comes into and joins forces with startups, especially, again, validating the idea, bringing the distribution, bringing the relevant discussion, and opening the right doors for the people, and also supporting their ecosystem. But when it comes to the ultimate adoption or simplifying and leveraging what both companies or both parties are doing, Amazon is still a the top one or tier one infrastructure provider worldwide for web services. And with that, there's also the Amazon Marketplace. Before that, I would maybe invite you to touch a bit and describe a bit what's the mission of AWS Marketplace, and then we'll have several other interesting topics to cover.
Maybe some samples, some concrete samples, because Luciano was asking, Nikita, if you're saying some inspiring things, please bring some example. I would say no example, no party. You see the companies which are pretty famous, you know, which are, I would say, using AWS services at the moment. And I'm looking at them and smiling because there is always a story standing behind every of them. As Luciano mentioned, you have a story with MultiversX. And I would like just to mention that, for example, Coinbase runs machine learning on AWS for online identification. And they are using like Amazon SageMaker for their anti-fraud detection purposes. And this is like one example of the collaboration of building a special detection model, I would say, to decrease the risk of the fraud for the company. Union Bank. And this is the story about the connections. It's partners with Consensus and Kaleido to drive future banking practices. And the story standing behind is like connected more than 500 banks in the rural area on the blockchain platform. And the last, maybe not the least, example about 1inch, it's the company who reduced cloud expenditure by 30%, just migrating to AWS Graviton, I would say, specialized CPU. And these are the stories, both technical and go to market, And if there is a recording, please switch off the recording. But we have kind of a personal joke sometimes with my friends about this story. Nobody will say your word inside AWS if you did not succeed to propose some new product to a startup. But I would have a hard discussion with my manager if I did not recommend some optimization of the cloud, some well-architected review, something which could help you grow in the cloud organically with the minimum cost, which is one of the core points. That's the story I wanted to emphasize.
Very, very, very interesting, and especially now with respect to the companies here behind, I think everybody knows the amount of users those guys or those companies are servicing and the accuracy needed for the infrastructure underneath to work in order to have a new kind of financial system being built on top of the internet. Maybe I'll go to the next point again with respect to the AWS marketplace that exactly, maybe with respect to the AWS marketplace, there are some very, very interesting points that the longer you spend time with such partners, the longer you find out there's always more to do. And to reiterate again, from building, supporting the ecosystem, bringing the relevant discussion, what about the distribution? And with that in mind, we actually have been working for quite some time to bring up the one-click node deployment in the AWS marketplace, especially providing this kind of relevant, simplified experience for everybody to be part of.
When you hear the phrase from Luciana, who says about one-click deployment on the AWS marketplace, this is not only a technical part. This is about taking the sales muscle of AWS, leveraging it to, I would say, to start growing aggressively. You see, this is the story which stands behind. And we are talking a lot during the day about building the bridges, and increasing the penetration of Web3 technologies. And this is exactly the motion what we need if we're really addicted to our goals.
Definitely, definitely. I think the time is running out. Once again, I think with respect to the one-click node deployment, very happy to announce that we're working together closely. It's, I think, one approval away from the AWS side. We tried to get it on stage today and it will be announced, but I think the following days will be up and running as well. So if you are a builder, if you are an infrastructure provider or a founder, please reach out Nikita, reach out to AWS. Let's join forces and build a better tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, team. Thank you, everybody.
Awesome.
So, before we go to lunch, are you ready for the most fun fireside chat we have for you today? Our next guest is Liu Bin, who leads the business team of Web3, AI, and media verticals at Tencent Clouds International. He drives strategic partnerships and builds ecosystem synergies in emerging fields such as Web3 infra, gaming, AI, and new media. Alongside Benjamin Minku, he's here to bring us his 10 cents on the industry. Please welcome Liu Bin.
Hello again. It's really great to have you here.
Hello.
And as you've seen, we've started a really important round of conversations and dialogues that all have to do with accelerating adoption. And we've looked at this from several angles with different partners. And we now have a conversation with Tencent. And their view and their experience is also very different. We've specifically looked a bit at it through the lens of gaming, Metaverse, and Web3. And I'm very, very curious to hear a bit your thoughts and what you guys are doing in Web3. And then probably we'll touch a bit on how MultiversX and Tencent are working on something exciting that we want to share with the community today.
Sure. Thank you so much, Ben. It's our first time to meet in real world. And pardon my English, you can tell that from my face, not really good. So thank you so much. It's really a pleasure to be here and also to be the partner of MultiversX. So just want to introduce Tencent a bit. Maybe not everybody knows the Tencent. So Tencent is one of the most successful company in Web2 world. So we have gaming, we have the social media, we have cloud, we have investment, and also many related industries. And especially for gaming, we have our own studios. We develop our own games, such as PUBG Mobile. But we also invested in a lot of studios and also platforms like Epic, like Riot, Supercell, Shopmo, a lot. In fact, in Europe, we made a lot of investment in gaming studios. And in social media, we have many interesting applications like WeChat, which Elon Musk is, want to learn from us, and maybe it's the future of the Twitter. And also we have our cloud. We are ranking kind of top 5 in the world, right after AWS. And they are here. So I'm from Tencent Cloud, and we are kind of the group in Tencent who is enterprise facing, and we are dealing with our enterprise customers. So we built our cloud not only for us, not only for our own gaming platform, but also for the enterprise customers. And so my sharing may be a bit different from other speakers, because I'm kind of from the traditional companies. So I share about my view from traditional point of view. But I think this is the beauty of the MultiversX. We have the different background of the people to build together. So it's my pleasure to be here.
It's really great to have you with us, Lou. And I believe this type of experience is what makes the conversation very fascinating, because each of our partners comes with a very distinct view on the world. They've started somewhere, they're built somewhere. And interestingly enough, if you look at a historic view of the internet took off much faster in Asia. As it was picking up in the US, there were several Asian countries that have really pushed in adoption and all of that. And I also know very specifically that there's significantly larger appetite in everything related to Metaverse, gaming, and so forth. So I'm very curious how you guys look at the gaming space, the Metaverse space, and the Web3 space especially, and what's super exciting for Tencent in this space.
Yeah, sure. So maybe let's start from the gaming part, since we are one of the largest company of the gaming, but traditional gaming. So in fact, we have noticed there are several trends in the traditional gaming part, and also it will also impact the Web3 game. And so we noticed that the first trend is that we noticed that the gaming market is kind of slowing down. There is not really exciting games this year, to be honestly. Not like previous years.
Why do you think that is?
Yeah, sorry?
Why do you think this happens, specifically this year?
It's really hard to, gaming market is different. You cannot really predict, what we learn from Netflix, that you can use the big data to predict the customers' favors, to make the tailored shows for them. But for games, you cannot predict. This year maybe the consumers, they like this type of games, but next year totally change. And even you just make the similar content, similar style, you cannot guarantee it will be a good game. We are working closely with Supercell. 99% of their games are not launched, so they killed 99% in house and only launched the 1%. So it's really lucky that to get a good game. It's not predictable. So that's why it's not really a surprise this year. There's no, maybe next year there's a good games come out, but this year is really a tough year for the gaming industry. Yeah, this is the first trend. We noticed that gaming market is the growth is slowing down. And the second thing is that the customer acquisition is really hard now. The customer acquisition is getting expensive and expensive. And even for Tencent, we put a lot on the channel. But for Apple Store, Google Store, and also different channels, but it's not really working well, to be honest. So this is the second trend. The third trend we noticed that is for gaming studios, the development circle is getting shorter. More than 60% of the games are developed within 1 year, with many new tools, with Unity, with AI tools. So these are the trends in the traditional gaming industry. And we also noticed that there is some interesting things happened in gaming, such as cloud gaming, and also to break the walls between gaming and other scenario, such as for cloud gaming. We noticed that there's a lot of new EV cars, new energy cars. They are adopting very aggressively in cloud gaming, and also traditionally the living room TV screen, a lot of cloud gaming. And also we also noticed that this is not the cloud gaming is not only on the consoles on PC, but more popular on the device on the mobile. So these are the trends. But so talking about the Web3 gaming, why we think this is the impacting Web3 gaming. So the first is that for traditional games, they are also looking for the new breakthrough point and how to get good games. So Web3, of course, is one of the things they want to have the trial, have the innovative things. But the second thing is very attractive to them is that customer acquisition. For Web3, there is kind of naturally to attract the end users than traditional games. For traditional games, you need to invest a lot in the advertising. But now there's new type of advertising channels such as TikTok. You can build on the TikTok and also play game there. But in general, it's very the cost is very expensive. But for Web3, it's naturally to attract the users. No, you don't really need to put a lot of marketing cost, but to attract the users naturally. And this is the for gaming part. So yeah.
So zooming out a bit, and what makes this conversation special is again that Tencent is one of the largest giant companies actually in Asia. And they've been in several fields and sectors. They've built many applications and tools, and some of them already have billions of users. The exciting and really fascinating conversation that we've been having is again, how we accelerate adoption, how we find the pipelines to use this type of partnerships to build the bridges and enable users, whether they're from Asia or from Europe or from any other part of the world, to use this type of technology to really build on something that they could not have done before. So I'm very curious and excited if you want to share a bit the collaboration and partnership that we have in front of us.
Yeah, this is the most exciting part for me. Yes, just want to announce this. We will sponsor 120K USD for the community and especially for the hackathon. And we think there will be a lot of interesting games built on MultiversX, and also, maybe one of them will be the significant games next year. Will really amaze the world.
Woo! Now, what's remarkable about this conversation as well is that this is a very important starting point that opens the ecosystems, the MultiversX ecosystem especially, opens the startups that are here and the builders to a much larger ecosystem within Tencent. They are here, excited about the builders, very excited about the builders specifically in the gaming space and metaverse space, but a lot of other builders, very much looking forward to looking at the startups and helping them accelerate some of the progress. From what you've looked at within MultiversX, what do you believe at this point is the most exciting thing about the ecosystem or about the technology?
Well, there are a lot of things very excited. In fact, I was thinking to mention this part in Metaverse, but since just address a bit about Metaverse. So we think that last year it was a great year for Metaverse, but this year is going down a bit. But we believe that Metaverse is still the future. And if you notice the east side of the world, Shanghai, the Shanghai local government in China, they just announced the supporting plan for Metaverse 3 months ago. When it's a really bear market, they noticed that it's the trend. No matter it's a good timing or not a good timing now, but because Metaverse, we believe in the future is we kind of mix the reality. You will break the wall between the real world and also the Metaverse. You will break the wall between Web 2 and Web 3. And this is the things, the very exciting thing to work with MultiversX, such as your wallet. You can accept crypto payment and also fiat payment. This is the things we really appreciate, kind of break the wall between Web 2 and Web 3. And also, there's another thing to announce. So we are working with MultiversX to launch the one-click nodes deployment to accelerate the DApp, the ecosystem in MultiversX.
Woo! This is another really exciting milestone to have the node deployment within Tencent Cloud for their ecosystem, making sure that this is even simpler to be done by a much larger audience and community that they have. I do believe that there are many exciting conversations, especially in the gaming space, especially in the metaverse space, and Web3 can rewire some of the behaviors precisely because it brings some new incentives and can make the gaming experience feel more real because it adds this layer of, let's say, economics and then makes rules perhaps less bendable, more firm and clear. Have you seen maybe what's the most exciting application at this point that you've seen within the Web3 space that you believe could accelerate or could take things to the next level?
I think still the gaming, until now I cannot say name an application. But in general, I think the next year, in fact, this is the money. We have money common sense this especially in East Asia. We noticed that the gaming apps, Web3 games, will be the most important application next year. Of course, decentralized exchange, a lot of unhappy things happened this year for centralized exchange. But we also think the kind of swipe companies, they are kind of great. There will be great application next year, and we can fund them all in the MultiversX. And furthermore, want to address that. So again, we are not a Web3 native company. We are a kind of giant Web2. And to be honest, we are quite conservative in Web3. So when you talk about Tencent, it's really hard to hear about Web3. You cannot really link the name together. And this is why we are working with MultiversX. MultiversX can fulfill all of our expectations. Since we are running a lot of financial service, and also we have a large business, especially in China, and there's very strict regulation in China. We need to keep a good fame. We cannot work with some kind of high-risky partners, such as some unnamed exchange companies. Even we are working with them, we can announce the partnership. But working with MultiversX, the consideration is kind of high security. I'm really sorry.
We can bring some water.
It's okay. It's okay. Yeah. In Web3, we are test water, right? Testing the water. Yeah. So the high security and also the open community. This is with different background and also different people, from all around the world. And also that one thing as mentioned, Metaverse is one of the things we believe will be happen in the world. In the future. So that's why we want to partner with MultiversX. So, yeah.
As I was mentioning before, it's fantastic to have you here with us and to start on this new journey. It's really great that this collaboration enables builders to come even closer to using different type of infrastructure, whether for the metaverse, whether for cloud computing or other elements like that. But it's the most important part that we're coming back to is whatever path we can find to accelerate adoption, we want to pursue it. So the more partners we have, the more bridges we have, the more adoption we can focus on, gather, and enable. And this specific conversation opens up an extraordinarily large market in Asia. As you say, there's not only a very different, let's say, culture, but very different behaviors there. Having this kind of collaboration to translate and use some of the services and bring them around Asia is extraordinarily important. I know we've had several conversations with you, and my colleagues have already participated in some conferences and so forth. But I also believe that this collaboration not only accelerates, but immediately reinforces what we have started. I'm sure you're also part of the hackathon with the entire conversation there. We've tried to compress the time and put all the resources in so that builders have absolutely no excuse. You have all the opportunities in the world. Now it's time to jump in the water. It's time to build something, and we could not be more excited than to have this new partnership with Tencent, to have you with us, and I'm very much looking forward to the next steps we're going to make. So thank you very much, Lou.
Thank you.
Looking forward to the next steps.
welcome back. We have 3 chairs this time, so welcome back to Chapter 4. It's fintech, DeFi, and regulation and investment. Now, this Chapter 4 begins with a lesson for us in fintech, meaning, dear Luca, a space where finance meets innovation. Traditional banking is reimagined through the lens of decentralized finance. This is what the talk is about.
Yes, but as with all revolutions, this one too navigates the intricate maze of regulation. Today, we'll dissect the challenges and opportunities that lie in this intersection, understanding the nuances of compliance, the promises of investments, and the future trajectory of digital finance.
So, good people, whether you are a budding investor, a tech enthusiast, or someone just intrigued by the evolving landscape of finance, we're here to deep dive into fintech's frontier. We will demystify DeFi, we will decode regulation, and we chart the future of financial innovation.
To guide us to the future of fintech, which, as we all know by now, will be on-chain future, we have 6 panels lined up, but don't worry, we'll have a coffee break before.
Yeah, we'll help you. We will get the help from Deloitte and MultiversX. You'll learn about the most accurate and cleanest data available on the market and the metrics driving today's investments.
We'll bridge the gap between DeFi and traditional finance and unlock the power of staking with the latest strategies and trends.
And we never forget, of course, about security and innovation. Now, let's start off the first panel with the 3 speakers, led by the lead executive and CPO of X-Money, Martinho Aragão.
Let's welcome him.
Welcome.
Hello, everyone. So we are here at the panel, so let me introduce you who's going to be speaking for the most part today. So we have Sania, VP for Europe for Circle, and we have Sunny, who's the co-founder of Osmosis and Cosmos as well. So let's start with sort of context as well. So I'd like to give each of you 1 minute to speak a bit about what the company does and about your experience for the sake of this panel as well. So perhaps starting with you, Sania.
Yeah, sure. So hello, everyone. My name is Sania. I'm the Vice President of Europe at Circle. So Circle is a global tech financial company. We enable always-on commerce, payments, and custody. And we are also the issuer of USDC and Eurocoin stablecoins. And prior to Circle, I was the CEO of X-Money. So it's great to be here with a different hat, wearing a different hat, and still having meaningful conversations and driving the ecosystem forward. So thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you.
Hey everyone, my name is Sunny. I've been a member of the Cosmos ecosystem and co-founder of a project called Osmosis. Cosmos, we are a blockchain ecosystem really focused on a concept called app chains, which is the idea that like most big applications, especially fintech applications, are going to need to have their own custom blockchains to achieve the scale and customizability that they want to achieve their product goals. And so, I helped build the Cosmos stack for a number of years, and then eventually started building a decentralized exchange called Osmosis, built on that custom app chain stack.
So because today we're going to be speaking about the future of fintech and why it's on-chain, I think it would be good if we start with trying to compare both of these sides and consider the pros and cons, basically. So what would be the pros and cons of the on-chain financial system versus the traditional financial system? Maybe starting now with you, Sunny.
Yeah, I think actually one of the biggest sort of talked about benefits of on-chain is the composability by default. This idea that like APIs are supposed to be open as the default of how systems work. Today, When you build in Web 2, you build in isolated systems, and then you have to say, open up APIs and say, oh, I want these sorts of things to be able to integrate with my product. And the rate of innovation is much more slower, while with on-chain stuff, with smart contracts and IBC and cross-chain interoperability, you build applications, and by default, it's permissionless for anyone to plug into your stuff, and people will start to be able to build products and applications that you might not have even expected. And so this open APIs nature of on-chain deep fintech, I think, is one of the killer features.
Thank you. Sanya, what would be the pros of the on-chain financial system?
I think there are many, but for me, it always comes back to think about sending a payment like anywhere in the world today, even domestically, but specifically internationally or cross-border. That payment is not immediate. So the best we have is what we call like T+2. So it's 2 business days for the payment to be settled. And if you're sending that cross-border to an individual or a company, it can take more than a week. So I think the biggest advantage is the fact that these intermediating middlemen, that payment can be almost too immediate, depending on what kind of payment we're talking about. We are not depending on banking hours, holidays. So it's an on-chain financial system, disintermediated. The cost of transactions is much lower. So I was looking at some interesting stats this morning, and when we talk about remittances, so those are people like sending money back home. And the value of the market is $800 billion, like only last year. And these are like migrant workers sending money back home. So on average per transaction, which is $200, $300, the average value they pay in fees, it's 6%. So that's $50 billion spent in fees just on remittances. And with an on-chain technology and in particular with stable coins like USDC, we can reduce that cost more than 80%. And there are many other advantages, but I think just for the sake of time, I think for me personally, why I'm here in this industry is the potential for financial inclusion. We're very lucky here today, but there are almost 2 billion people that are unbanked or underbanked, not having access to a bank account, being excluded from global trade, not having financial freedom. And here I see the biggest opportunity because most of these people, they have a device, they have internet, and therefore with technologies like stable coins and digital currencies, they can have money, transact money, they can spend, they can save money, and they can participate in the global economy.
Thank you. Now, picking from the perspective of the cons or perhaps the challenges of one system versus the other, and doing a follow-up on you, Sunny, one of the things that you mentioned is the open APIs and that open perspective, but also in a way it can be perhaps challenging the fact that it's very fractured and that there's different of these ecosystems, for example. Do you have any other cons from this or any immediate perspectives of this specific con?
Yeah, I think the fragmentation. I think is a good point, but I think the goal is to build. Part of the point of open APIs is then you can have things like aggregators come along and like plug into everything and like provide this unified experience, and you have this like sort of modular stack that emerges where now you have it. Where if you wanted to build an exchange in the past, you had to go build a trading engine, you had to go build the UI, you have to build everything, right? Well, now you can have like, hey, some people are going to focus on just the order book mechanism. Other companies can focus on a UI layer that then integrates with multiple back-end liquidity systems. So you get this like, that's the power of the open APIs where you have that modularity as a benefit actually. One of the other big cons, I think that my team, we spend a lot of time thinking about is the privacy side of things. That's really where our team, our original origin came from, where we did a lot of work with privacy, and then we were like, wanted to bring privacy to the masses. We realized privacy is a feature, not a product. So we're like, okay, let's build a DEX and then use that to push our privacy ideas. But basically, you have this situation today where, like, on-chain, you have very, very bad privacy, right? Like, centralized systems today actually have much better privacy. When you're trading on a centralized exchange, no one can see which account is making which trade. But on DeFi today, everyone can see, oh, this account made this trade, this trade, this trade. It's leaking it to everyone. The benefit of blockchains, though, is you have this transparency, right? You say, like, oh, you can see as a system, this is how much over-levered the entire system is, or this is where the risks are piling up. And I think that's actually what you don't have in TradFi, right? You don't have systemic transparency. No one could see how over-levered FTX was. No one could see how over-levered the Wall Street was in 2008, right? And no one could see, like, oh, the things that were, like, these insurance companies that were supposed to be insuring things had the very things in their own balance sheets, right? There's no transparency into the system. So I think the goal of what we spend a lot of time on is, like, building the privacy primitives that give our motto that we focus on is, like, privacy for the individual, transparency for the system. And so using, like, novel, the industry is originally, now we call it Web3, but, it was originally the crypto industry, right? And, like, how do we use new types of cryptography to allow that privacy for the individual, transparency for the system?
Yeah, I think maybe to add on that, I think you're talking, like, more of a perspective, everyone in Web3, but we need to, like, sell it to the customers. And, like, I have a lot of conversations with what we call, like, Web2, whatever, customers or institutions. And I think the main issues today are, one, regulation. So we need better regulation, and the lack of it makes sure that people are scared, and institutions and companies, they don't know how to treat digital currency. They don't know how to save it on their balance sheet. People don't know if they are protected or not, and that creates a lot of friction. And the second thing, I think, we all need to address this. It's still very complex for an average person to understand what they need to do. The user experience it's difficult. So I think everyone here, really, we need to address usability and user experience for people to be able to have more intuitive, like more easy to use experiences when entering into Web3.
And knowing this, how do you see the system being integrated, so on-chain being integrated into traditional finance? Do you see that happening, and how do you see that happening?
Yeah, definitely. I think to give an example of Circle, we collaborate already with many traditional companies. So Visa, MasterCard, Stripe, and MoneyGram are examples. So maybe to touch base on two real case example with utility. So Visa is already using us to settle USDC payments directly to merchants. So Visa already processed millions of dollars in transactions by settling USDC to the merchants directly through WorldPay and Nuvei, which are payment service providers. So that's a great example of how on-chain can bring more utility into the traditional ecosystem by lowering the cost of settlements for merchants. And the other case is MoneyGram. So we actually have a partnership with UNHCR and Stellar, where in crisis situations like war, we enable money and USDC in this case to be transferred directly to people in their wallet on their phone. And as we know, when there's a war, when there's any type of crisis happening, access to money on the ground might be compromised or not existing. So in this case, we enable direct disbursement of USDC, but people can cash it out directly in thousands of MoneyGram locations on the ground. So these are just two examples, but I think they're very representative of how we can collaborate with more traditional companies.
And on your side, Sunny, do you see how this could be improved or increase the adoption between these two systems? Or do you think that the traditional space and the on-chain space should stay entirely separated?
No, I think blockchains and open systems will end up providing the back end for traditional systems to like run on top of. So, I think USDC actually is an example, right? It is a more centralized thing, but it's running on decentralized platform blockchains as the back end to power them, right? And so I think the same thing will happen with like exchanges, right? I think eventually centralized exchanges are going to not be where the order books live. They're going to focus more on like being the fiat on-ramp, as well as the user interface, the UX side of things, but then they're probably going to actually plug into like more decentralized liquidity protocols, and then you have all the exchanges sort of plugging into the same unified liquidity layer, which is going to be most successful on a permissionless, decentralized open system.
So picking from one of the points that I believe both of you already mentioned as well, one of the challenges or disadvantages currently of the on-chain seems to be a lot about the user experience and the simplicity. So if we consider that the traditional space has a lot of areas in which for many people it's quite intuitive, but in the case of on-chain that's not so, how do you think we should be improving this experience in the sense of what are the areas that we need to focus down on to boost the more adoption, or even, and afterwards I'll make a follow-up question of some examples of or specific ways or use cases that help get more people into the on-chain. But first of all, we need to focus obviously on the user experience and overall simplicity. So what are the things, and perhaps starting with you, Sania, that you see clearly need to be improved?
So I think like on a broader perspective, as you say, as I mentioned before, like to attract more people, like we need to solve for better regulatory framework so that people know that they are protected, and whatever happens, there is someone that can take care of them. The second aspect is, and that's what we're all doing here, like we need to educate people that, hey, there is real utility. Like this is not only about speculation anymore. We have entered into a utility phase, and these are the real advantages that you as an individual or a business can experience. So it's not only about buying an altcoin to have profit, but there is real utility. And usually when I talk to people about that, that's really interesting. And as USDC, with USDC only, we have transacted more than $12 trillion so far. So just to give you a perspective of the utility in payments. And I think in terms of like the complexity of the user experience, we need to abstract blockchain concepts. I think, in the end, in the future, the way I see it, like people will not even know there is blockchain behind it, or there is a digital asset. They will just use a service and it's better and faster and cheaper. But they don't necessarily need to know that there is blockchain there, and that's where I think we're all aiming to go if we want to have mass adoption.
In your case, Sunny, what are the things that you see that clearly need to be improved? I think one of the interesting points, by the way, is that both of you are aligned in the sense that blockchain is meant to be used more in terms of mass adoption as a backend, but in terms of the experience, perhaps they don't need to know. But in your case, have you had some situations where there were clear challenges to bring people, like some use cases, to bring people into the on-chain solution, and such are examples of where it could be things that we obviously need to improve?
Yeah, so we actually do spend a lot of time also thinking, not just on the back end, but also on the front end side. So we do maintain our own, there are multiple interfaces for the Osmosis DEX, but we do maintain one of them. And we kind of use it as a sample, like, reference implementation of what we imagine the interface is looking like. And we also have a wallet that our team maintains as well. So, I think the big thing for us is we need to actually fix a lot of the infrastructure around account management. So I'm actually going to be giving a talk tomorrow in the innovation stage about this, but like a lot of focus now on account abstraction, and like today the world where you have to go download a browser wallet and stuff is just like kind of crazy. And you know, one of the actual reasons, you know, what am I doing here at the MultiversX conference, right? Like, I mean, I've known this team for a long time, but you know, I remember back in like 2020, they showed me their mobile wallet, and like today there's a lot of mobile wallets, but like back when they showed it to me in 2020, I was like, this is like the best mobile wallet I've seen in all of crypto. And so I think that like, you know, really improving, you know, on the mobile side, making it easier for people to use, like a lot of the cryptography that we use in blockchains today was like what Satoshi chose to use like 12 years ago with the SecP 256K1, but like the types of cryptography have iterated a lot since then. There's a lot of new cryptography that's like built. If you have an iPhone, it's like in the secure enclave signer. You can be, you know, you don't need to have a wallet app anymore. You know, there's ways. As long as we support the right cryptography in the blockchain, you can use your phone as a wallet without needing a special wallet app. And so what we've been spending a lot of time doing recently is like advancing the state of cryptography. And, you know, just in Web 2, there's been a lot of iteration in the last 10, 15 years with passkeys and privacy pass and all these sorts of things, and bringing some of those Web 2 innovations into Web 3 to improve the UX.
And I think everyone here ends up already have used on-chain, so you know, for the most part, Web3 users in a way. But based on what we were discussing, we started with pros and cons, so the advantages and disadvantages. And we know that in general, users tend to be, or people in general tend to be quite attracted first when it comes to crypto, in the more volatile aspect in terms of making money, for example, especially when we consider the developed countries, for example. It might not be the case so much in the others. But we discuss in general, from the perspective of industries and from the perspective of companies, what are the advantages. But if you're discussing, and if for sure you've had those situations where you're talking to someone that only uses traditional services, what are the actual advantages that help you convert them into on-chain? Is it the cross-border, for example, that was mentioned in terms of transaction? Is it the open APIs that actually get someone that's currently only using financial systems being converted into start using on-chain? Perhaps starting with you, Sania.
Sure. I think it really depends who we talk to, but overall, the cost aspect always is the main one. And what I usually try to explain to people is like the comparison of what happens in a traditional payment versus on-chain. And whenever you pay with like a card or you send a wire transfer, actually there are so many middlemen in the chain, and people might not be aware. And just an example is like there's the issuing bank, there's the receiving bank, there's the acquirer, the payment processor, there's the credit card scheme, and like on top of all of that, there is like the FX conversion as well. And so it's surprising why it's so costly to transact. So I think, you know, the first thing that people want to understand is, you know, what happens on chain, and, you know, we eliminate most of these intermediaries, and that's why it's like up to 80 or 90% cheaper. And everyone wants to save money, so that's the main argument for individuals and companies. And I think everything we talked about, like there is real utility. So as you say, it's not about speculation anymore. There is real utility, and what is that utility? It's like cross-border payments, it's remittances, is disbursing aid on the ground. And there is already a lot of things that we can do and improve. So I think, yeah, these are mostly the main advantages when we talk to customers, and especially when we talk to companies that might not be accustomed to use digital assets.
What about you, Sunny?
What was the question again?
Yes, so when it comes to actually converting users that only use financial systems, what are the key advantages that help you convert them into on-chain users?
Yeah, I think it's usually like things around, I think you're right, Sonia's right, where it like kind of depends on which user we're talking about. If it's for the developers, it actually usually is a lot of the open API stuff. I think like long term, I think the answer is mostly comes around like, well, in medium term, it's a lot of like, oh, I can pay anyone anywhere. Like, you know, today, if you go to people who like, mostly like in the US or something, you know, they're fine paying their friends on Venmo. But like once you start traveling and stuff, it's like paying friends, you know, having to deal with like, different currencies and all this kind of stuff. It's like if you can minimize as much of that as possible, I think the speed of that settlement is like really what wows people there. And then I think though, like a lot of this is mostly just like technical arbitrage and like a little bit of regulatory arbitrage happening, right? Where it's like, you know, the TradFi systems have been, you know, invented, a lot of them like are 30, 40 years old, and like, you know, there's a world where these TradFi systems will just like iterate and eventually like match the settlement speeds and stuff of blockchains, right? I do think, like I mentioned at the beginning, the selling point of blockchain is the privacy stuff. Like that is what you fundamentally cannot do with centralized systems. You know, most of the privacy stuff you need, a lot of the techniques involve something called multi-party computation, MPC, and fundamentally to coordinate multi-party computation, you kind of need to have a blockchain-style system to do that. And so, you know, when I'm pitching my crypto skeptic friends on like why crypto is exciting, I'll tell them about the scalability and the settlement speed, and they're like, yeah, but that, you know, a lot of them work in fintech. They're like, yeah, we can do that too, right? Like Venmo settles in a minute as well. But like when I pitch the privacy, that's when they're like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense.
So now trying to shift it more towards the institutions and the traditional finance. We obviously know that this integration, and based on the discussions we've just had, there's more and more integration potential for both of these services. But what advice do you have for traditional finance companies or individuals to actually start speaking and getting on board into on-chain? Is there something that they should be taking care of? Because exactly as we just mentioned, there's skepticism in general about some of the situations that have happened. So do you have, Sunny, any advice for the traditional space to start entering more from an institutional point of view?
Yeah, sure. We talk with institutional companies every day. And really, the main message for them is like, actually, you know, the time is now. This is not a new technology. You're already late. So if you don't have knowledge within your company, like go and hire someone that can bring it into your organization and that can educate your organization. And it's not only about the knowledge, but like really, what are the use cases for your business where blockchain and digital assets can be used, so that you can already start to innovate. And really the main message is really like, don't do it yourself, because for traditional, like especially legacy payment companies, like it's really difficult for them to innovate on their own. It's not fast at all. It takes many years. So don't do it alone. Like, can you go and partner with a Web3 startup, a Web3 company, and pilot projects together so that, you know, that utility, you can bring it to the market in a faster way. And really, I think it's our role as well to educate traditional companies. And we have a responsibility in the ecosystem to do so and to help them. And what I find now, you know, versus 5-6 years ago, is that it's easier. Like, organizations are very interested. Everyone wants to know, and like everyone wants to understand. So there is a lot of openness, actually, and it's our job to educate them and to help them navigate the complexity. Because I think, you know, there is real value that we can bring to each other if we actually collaborate together on pilots that will become actual programs.
What about you, Sunny? Any advice for the financial companies of the traditional space to start interacting and entering the on-chain space?
Yeah, maybe I'll take a second to promote Cosmos a little bit, where you know, one of our biggest investors they're called Ribbit Capital, and they're like a well-known like crypto, but also like very big fintech investor. And the reason that they are so interested in Cosmos is that they think that at some point their entire fintech portfolio is eventually going to want to like go on chains in some way, but they think all of their fintech portfolio is going to want to have their own app chain, right? They want to have a little bit more control over like customizing their stack for their use case. Robinhood is probably not going to build on an existing blockchain. They're going to want to go build their own blockchain, you know? So I think I guess my advice to like a traditional company would be like, don't be over focused on what you hear about as the limitations of blockchains today. It's like, oh, the gas costs are so high, or the speed is so small, or like, you know, you can go build custom blockchains to fit your needs. And I think that's the way that like fintech companies are actually going to become blockchains.
Any final words regarding the topic? If Sunny?
No.
No, that's fine. What about you, Sanya, for the future of fintech?
No, actually, I'm here. Unfortunately, I need to go back tonight, but I'm here in the next couple of hours if anyone is interested to talking to me about, you know, if you have an interest about what we do, if you're interested in partnering, very happy to have a conversation.
So thank you all for paying attention to this speech. And thank you for our panelists as well.
Thank you.